God is good, and with each day that passes brings us a day closer to the launch of Pantheon Rise of the Fallen. This is the Napalm channel, and if you are new here, please consider subscribing, especially if you're interested in Pantheon related content on our march to launch. Today, guys, I want to talk a little bit about the Living Codex, because in the recent stream that we just had, it was brought up. Someone in the community brought up the Living Codex, and Joppa basically said that they're working on some new UI, things like that, and that there'll be a lot of information released soon. So I want to go ahead while we don't know anything, and it's the most exciting time to talk about. I wanted to talk about the Living Codex. So the Living Codex and Prime Scrolls, basically, is part of the game where you can basically manage your spells and abilities to a certain extent. Your book will have two separate sections, the way I'm understanding it, in the Living Codex. So there'll be the basic essentials, right, where it's, your regular common spells and abilities are stored. And those are the ones that, just by playing the game, leveling up, yada yada yada, these are the ones you get, right? These are the ones that everybody has, right? That has that class, I mean. So these are your basic, this is your class role, very basic kind of abilities, right? And from what I understand, those are what they are. They don't change. However, there's this other section where you have these transcendent abilities, and these are found out in the world, which is really exciting. Like, you have to go out and get these, and each class will have these prime scrolls that they got to go out and get, and they're rare abilities, right? They're collected out in the world in some fashion, some way. These can be modified. And from what I understand, there's 3 modifiers. So you get the Seal of Amplification, the Brand of Resilience, the Signet of Synergy. So this basically changes the way that spell works and what it does and how it interacts with the world and the environment. So it could increase bonuses, it could maybe make negative effects not as bad, and modifiers, and enhance other things and all that kind of stuff. So you use these on those prime scrolls to make them even more unique. The thing is Pantheon's really big on class identity, right? So each class having an identity in what it does, what it specializes in, what its weaknesses are, right? Because that's the thing lost in MMOs, in my opinion, is that they're trying to get rid of all the weaknesses of every class. Well, classes need weaknesses if you're going to make a game where you need other people and you need other players, because the other players make up for that weakness that your class has, and you need that to survive in a dangerous world. So what it basically does, it allows some personal customization, so you can kind of have an individual play style and how you want to play the game without actually ruining the identity of your class itself. It also allows you to be in a specific type of group. You're like, wow, we have 2 warriors, for example, in this group, so let me adjust some of my prime scrolls and modify those a little bit to kind of make myself do a little bit more DPS or whatever's needed for the group. So this opens up a crazy amount of combinations that any group could do based on every class having this crazy amount of variation in the way that they want to modify their prime scrolls, especially in game where, and as we get later into after the launch of the game, where people are getting more and more of these prime scrolls and getting them stacked up, and then you get to group with them, and it's just, if you think about it, it just creates this really impressive dynamic to the world and to the way you're going to play your game, and the way you have to think about your play style and think about your group composition in order to best survive. Now, I've done a little research on what people think about it, and one very interesting thing I found someone talking about was that it seems to be a new take on the research from EverQuest. So in EverQuest, you have these 60 plus drop spells that can be modified to do more damage or make it last longer or something like that. So it does sound like actually an evolution of that type of thing. Also, another thing that I found people talking about was, what if you're only allowed to scribe so many of these primals? So you could collect all the prime scrolls and you have them saved, but you can only scribe so many of them. So therefore you might have to unscribe one of them to scribe one that you have waiting, in order to maybe allow that particular group to survive better in a particular encounter or a particular dungeon where a certain disposition seems to be prevalent, or whatever the case may be. Or maybe you're missing a certain kind of class that you really could use for this particular encounter, so everybody can kind of modify and change and scribe and unscribe in order to best fit the group. And I think that's pretty interesting as well. I think In my opinion, though, I think it would be cool just to have them all. So if you collected them, you can go ahead and you can go ahead and use those abilities. They're all scribed at the same time. But I can also see the dynamic of only having a few available at a time, also making them more meaningful and more of a choice for the player in order to best fit their group. So I think it's cool either way. But what's most interesting about this is that this could get really wild, especially going forward as the game ages, as it's been out for a while and we get into expansions and things like that, and they can add new modifiers, right? That would just change everything. You know, adding one new modifier out into the world that people can use changes the game completely. And also, the more options a player has, the more flexibility they have in their character and their abilities changes the way we play in general, right? So players will find ways to do some stuff that the developers never thought of, because when you give players more options, they figure out crazy things. It's just the way that it works. And there will be people doing things that nobody ever expected. There could even be classes who end up playing roles they weren't even meant to play, possibly in the future, especially if they add new modifiers as time goes on. I like to think of Final Fantasy XI, where they actually didn't intend for the ninja to be a tank. But now, if you're a ninja in Final Fantasy XI, guess what you're doing? You're a tank, due to people figuring out some of the abilities and what they could do with them, and realizing that it was not only possible, but it was actually worked really well. And the developers had no intention of that whatsoever, but that's what happened. And they didn't try to go in and nerf things and change and mix things up. They just said, well, hey, players like it, they figured out something cool, that's interesting, and good job. And that is the approach Visionary Realms seems to have with the development of Pantheon Rise of Fallen. For example, when they were talking about the climbing and the verticality of a lot of these dungeons, they were saying, you know, players are going to figure out some crazy things. They're going to be able to find shortcuts we didn't anticipate and all these kind of things, and we're okay with that. So that just kind of shows you that that's the kind of developers they are. They like that. They like it when players are able to figure out things and do things that maybe wasn't intentionally designed to be that way. However, the players have found a way to make that work, and it's a good thing. It's good for the community, it's good for the game, it makes the world more mysterious, and it makes everything be like, ooh, wonder what we can do with this now that they've introduced this concept. Let's see how this plays out in every possible scenario we possibly can. And that's what makes the game feel a lot more sandboxy as compared to being very linear or theme parky. And it's these kind of options giving to the player that really is going to make Pantheon Rise of Fallen something special. What do you guys think about the Living Codex? Is there any additional things you think that they'll talk about, or any things that maybe you would like to see that we haven't heard about? Do you think this is a good idea, a bad idea? Does it worry you that it's going to hurt the class identity? Or do you think the way that they're kind of developing this, where it's only the Prime Scrolls that you'll be able to modify, or at least that's the way I interpret it, will kind of help with that? So let me know what you think in the comments down below, guys. Thanks for joining me. We're heading into 2020. I expect to be a very exciting year for Pantheon Rise of Fallen, and I can't wait to talk more about it with you guys. And when they release more information about the Living Codex, I'll be right there, and of course, we'll talk more about it. Until next time, guys, God bless and happy gaming. Listen to what I say. I've been making videos all day. My friends all say I'm it's a video buffet. You can even hit replay. But please just subscribe. I can't even describe being part of my tribe. I'll even offer you a prize, but just please just subscribe and hit the bell notification too.